On है हाँ no okay okay. So in this class we'll get to know the vocabulary of anthropology. Whenever we venture into a new discipline, you must have noted while your graduation or college, whatever course you have studied, that every course has a language, right? We cannot write very simplistic answers, that too in an optional, when we are looking at how cardinal optional can be in terms of your scores in your mains. So today I'll just introduce you to certain broad terms used in anthropology. Do not take the pressure that I have to know all these terms today itself. I have to, learn all the examples today itself. Today we'll try to understand what the discipline caters to, what is the broad horizon, what will be the kind of topics we'll get associated with, and what is anthro. Before I begin the discussion, can somebody tell me what is anthropology in simple terms? Study of humankind? Everybody agrees on this? Holistic study. Okay. What is the difference between both the definitions? Every aspect. For example? Okay. Was not sociology studying all this? Why do we have a separate discipline? Societies. Okay. And what did your definition include? Everything? Okay. So that is fine. When we write our answers on what anthropology actually is, we break down this term into two parts, anthropos and logy. Anthropos means humankind. You will understand why I am focusing on this particular aspect. So yes, it is the holistic study of human beings. And it is a very nascent discipline, a very new discipline. It is not as old as history or as old as psychology. And that is why you will see that it is very multi-dimensional. And the most apt definition you will see everywhere. You will see toppers writing this definition. You will see this definition in Vivek Bhasmi sir's book, 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐧𝐧𝐞𝐥 sir's book, that anthropology is the study of humanity in totality or across space and time. This is the most lucid and the most accepted definition, so to speak. Now coming to the second part, why is this the only discipline which is so holistic? What is so special about this discipline that we call it holistic and multidimensional? If I talk about psychology, my focus in psychology will be to study human mind and the structures, cognitive abilities. If I talk about sociology, I will study societies. But in anthropology, you study primitive as well as modern societies. How the gradation from primitive to modern has happened. What were the changes which came on the way? I'll boil down all this argument to one phrase, human evolution, on every front, biological, archaeological, socio-cultural, and linguistic. That is why it is called holistic, because it is trying to study every perspective, every dimension of humanity, how societies evolved, how religion evolved. And not just modern societies, the older primitive ones as well as the modern ones, and how the gradation has happened. Similarly, religion. Do we all know what is animism? It's a very common term nowadays, animism. Practices related to sacrifice of animals. Okay. So will I call Eid also as a animistic practice? We have Eid where specifically we sacrifice certain animals also. Okay, do we all believe in religion? Are we atheists or agnostics, not sure of God's existence? We believe in religion, some form or the other. And the most common paradigm which I find resonates with the present generation is there's some form of a superpower which need not necessarily be given a certain name or a connotation. We agree with that. The energy of the universe, so to speak. So, how many types of religion exist today? That is another question to answer. Anthropology answers how religion has also evolved. For example, there is an evolutionary school of thought in religion. That initially we were people who believed in the concept of soul, and that is what animism means. We know about sacred groves, right? Have you heard of the term sacred groves? Some forest groups which are very sacred, which people will not allow you to cut because they have a certain kind of a belief or a religious identity associated with that particular group. If you have heard of Chipko movement, you must have seen in Uttarakhand people hugging trees because trees were a cardinal aspect for their life. So that is a concept of animism, a byproduct of animism, where we believe in the concept of soul. Everything or every living being has a soul, and therefore we need to respect it, revere it, and protect it. But today we have multiple forms of religion. So how has that happened? How the gradation happened? What are the perspectives on development of religion in human societies? And the most important question, what is the function of religion in the society? Why do we have religion? What function does it serve? Basic rules. Okay. Way of living. Okay. We have atheists who live without religion though. Basic rules, can you elaborate on your repetitions, limitations? Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Can you give any example? What is the common goal for Hindus? Enlightenment नहीं है, moksha. Yes. What you all are saying is fine. I'm asking you, what purpose does religion serve in my life? Why is it important? Faith, good, one thing. Peace of mind, good. Connect to the higher power, solace, spirituality. Can I reframe all your answers and then can I say it is a kind of a psychological satisfaction? When things don't go as I've planned them, I believe that there is something better in my destiny or there's something better that will happen. My efforts will not go in vain. So therefore, I believe in the higher power. So therefore, it gives me a psychological stability to fall back upon. First thing. Second, from the perspective of a society, can I say religion is a form of social control? It's a very common thing in India, na? भगवान के नाम से डरो, भगवान के नाम पे पैसे दो. Okay, if you're traveling here on every red light, you will find people who are giving you blessings. And if I give 10 rupees to everybody, I'm already ruined. Okay, so look at the thought process, how it is working. It is a kind of social control. For example, to put a kind of a bad image for criminals. He or she is a criminal, we shouldn't talk to them. Okay, if they have been in a cognizance of some very heinous offense, they'll be not allowed entry into institutions of public eminence, in temples. You'll never see, all the gangsters in temples and such places because they are an aberration from the social norm. So therefore, from an individualistic perspective, the function religion plays for me is it gives me a sense of psychological control or emotive stability. And secondly, from societal perspective, it is a means of social control. As somebody told, rules. It is a set of rules. So there are certain rules in every religion. You shouldn't drink alcohol, or you shouldn't consume a certain organism. For example, in Hindus, you cannot eat a cow. Okay, what is about cow which is so sacred for Hindus? This is a discussion class. See, please participate. There is no moral right or wrong answer. We'll learn more through discussions. Otherwise, I'll just give a huge bombardment of information and you'll think there is a lot to learn. With discussions, you will come out with your perspectives. You will remember those perspectives and you will learn to use them in your answers. Okay, optional answers are about expression, about expressing who you are as a person. And let us be honest, this subject is not 100% static. So you cannot, get away with memorizing certain things and writing them. There will be a certain personalized approach which will be required in your answers, your outlook, your perspectives. So there's no right or wrong answers. We will discuss and evolve good answers. And when so many of us are sitting together, we can make a pretty good answer, right? Individual answers generally lack on certain perspectives. So let's discuss. Okay, the point I was asking you was about the why is cow sacred in India? Okay, first point. Yes? Okay, so, ठीक है. What else? Okay, milk, which is considered to be whole food, no? For child and all, if you say that the child is not eating, so they'll say that give the child milk. Milk is a wholesome food. Fine, very good. What else? Worship. That is what I'm asking, no? Why it is being worshipped? It is worshipped, that means it is sacred. Why is it sacred? Very good. Another term, fight in the name of cows. So it was considered to be a wealth. So primitive economy was tied to cow. Okay, very good. Any other point? This gives you the reason why cow should not be killed in Hinduism. Try to go for rational answers. Okay? Because it has a very important economic interdependency. There's a case study on this. India, typically during the pre-independence phase, and for about 10 to 15 years post-independence also, we have had very devastating famines in the country, where a lot of people died. You will study in modern Indian history the Great Bengal Famine, where the British government was spending so much on the pomp and show of receiving their, kings, and the Indian population was dying out of malnutrition. There was a research which was done that Indian people are fools. When Indian people were pictured, so the foreign media or the English media was showing the rural background with a lot of cow which were roaming on the streets, and people are dying because of malnutrition. And they said that Indian people do not have the logic ability to think that they can just slaughter the cows and eat. They are dying. This was a Western research and therefore the opinion. We call this as ethnocentric bias in anthropology. Ethnocentric bias means, ethno means related to one ethnicity. Centric means it forms the center of your opinion. So for Americans who were studying the Indian rural economy, they were looking from a narrow perspective that Indians are fools. Why? Because they are not eating the cow. Culturally, eating cow is very normal in the West, because they did not know that cow is sacred in India. Clear? So we get a understanding of why cow is sacred, because it was an integral part of the rural economy, be it milk. So there are a community which are called Todas. Have you heard of them? Todas in Nilgiri Hills. A community which was heavily dependent on milk economy. They used to make butter and ghee. And if you look at their diet pattern, their food itself involves butter and rice every day. So now, as modern India progressed, they are now at the losing end in terms of employment avenues, because this profession is not enough for sustaining their livelihoods now, and now they have taken up certain menial jobs in the nearest cities, okay, like being bus drivers, etc. But if you look at the communities in India who have been historically dependent on cow for their survival, there are a lot of them. Clear? So what is the takeaway from this discussion? Economy's perspective, God's perspective. Again, milk is related to economy. Gavishti means in the search of cows. You will come across this term in ancient India NCRT. Okay? Go dan, a form of dan. Okay, even before Kanyadan. In the process of Kanyadan, Godan was considered to be a very superior form of dan, more than the kind of material dowry which we can think of today. So therefore, it was of a central, prominent importance, and we would never think of slaughtering the cows, irrespective of the degree of the pandemic we might be sitting in. Now, try to answer another question on similar lines. Why do Middle Eastern people, or for that matter, the predominantly Muslim communities across the world, bury their dead and not burn them? Why? No or minimal forests. Yes? So when there's already deficiency of trees, why would you waste trees there? Second point. Why do Muslim women, again stemming from this foundational religion, they wear burqa? For that matter, if you have seen the Saudi Arabian kings and all, they also wear a white kind of a getup, which is similar to the burqa. Why? Sandstorms, sunlight, because of the weather extremities. If we do not go into the logical underpinnings behind these reasons, we might have an ethnocentric bias. We might think that these people do not know how to live, or they are kind of inferior to us in any kind of a cultural practice. Now, this is what anthropology started figuring out when the discipline was laying its foundations. You will predominantly see most of the initial anthropologists are Western people, because they had the resources, they had the form, they had the material to move out from their countries in search of other communities. So when they ventured out to study other communities, they were already coming with a certain degree of preconceived notion that our culture is the best. We know best. Our English is best. Our way of life is best. Everything is best. So much so that there's also a tampering in geography. When you will study geography and you will categorize areas of the world, the central areas predominantly which fall in the Western hemisphere are called as temperate. And if you go by the English meaning of the word temperate, it means moderate. And the temperatures there are opposite of moderate. London, very ubiquitously famous for anytime rain, because whenever two fronts meet, there is a rainfall. And you cannot predict when that can happen. On the other hand, in India, nowadays you must be seeing that we are getting forecast on SMS. Specifically, I've seen this for Airtel people. You get an SMS that there will be a rainfall today. So we can at least predict our rainfall. So the term temperate was given to them by a Western geographer who thought he is sitting in the best area of the world. That is what is ethnocentrism, where my perspective, my point of view is limited, is narrow, and I end up thinking that I am the best, my culture is the best, everyone else is inferior. Therefore came the concept of white man's burden. So when they came to India, when they came to Africa, when they came to Southeast Asia in the form of imperialists, what did they say? That we'll teach you how to live. You are an inferior civilization. I hope you can understand where this thought process is coming from. So whenever they'll study any society, they studied the Ongi tribe in Andamans. Radcliffe Brown, you will study later on, is a structural functionalist scholar. very important scholar in anthropology. He studied the Ongi tribe. Similarly, you will have a multitude of tribes who are studied here. A monograph on Todas was also written. But the kind of studies they were giving at more points than one will be influenced by the background they are coming from. That means they will write with the ethnocentric bias. Clear? This is how initially anthropology began. And how did they know of this idea that let us go and explore other countries, other people, other nationalities? Because they were the West. They had the power, they had their own government, their own forms of rule in different parts of the world. Therefore, they had the right to do so, so to speak. So this began with the world of exploration. Okay, in detail, we'll discuss how history of anthropology developed, but this is how it began. I'll give you one more example. What do you know about lactose intolerance? Okay, in which countries is it is found more? Incidence of lactose tolerance is more in which areas of the world? West? Okay, when anthropologists, they started studying Africa, they decided to venture out and study different communities. One of them landed in Africa. Before studying Africa, they had this perspective in mind that Africa is a very poor continent. They don't have resources. Therefore, they do not consume milk. This was the notion with which these people were living all their lives. When they came to Africa, they saw that there's a lot of cattle. There's a lot of cattle which is involved in their everyday lives, but still they are not directly consuming milk. They are storing it, turning it into curd, cheese, into fermented forms, and then consuming it. And then came the study of lactose intolerance. So because of an anthropological perspective, we got to know that you cannot judge other societies on the parameters of that they are economically backward. You were sitting there and you were deciding. That kind of study in anthropology is called armchair anthropologists. I am trying to introduce you to keywords in between. One keyword you have already studied, ethnocentric bias or ethnocentrism. I have given that keyword, right? The second one which I am introducing now is armchair anthropology. Armchair anthropologists were people who were sitting very comfortably in their libraries on the basis of reading already existing works. They were giving opinions on different cultures. Armchair anthropology, sitting in an armchair, having all the books in front of you, and then preparing a conclusion. Opposite of armchair will be fieldwork anthropologists. Simple. Go to the field, assess the community, study the community, then record your observations. Fieldwork. What was the first term? Ethnocentrism. What is the opposite of ethnocentrism? Yes, what is cultural relativism? Every culture has its own cultural facets, societal norms, and we need to respect them. For example, in China, we have certain populations who eat snakes. There are two reactions to it. One reaction, they are primitive, they don't know how to live. Who eats snakes? They are poisonous. Second reaction, their culture, they get to decide. And because there is a certain form of eating practices, food practices, so to speak, are imbibed in a very crucial manner in every culture. So cultural relativism says, irrespective of what the other culture follows, we as human beings should respect those cultural paradigms. Clear? So ethnocentrism is the exact opposite of cultural relativism. By this example, it is clear to you, no? The study of lactose intolerance was on the basis of field work. That you went to the field, you saw African people having a lot of cattle, and then you saw them, you live with them, you realize that there is a process they follow. So when you live with those people, you get to know their economy. Clear? These terms are clear? Okay. Please tell me your understanding of Anthropocene. Okay. Anyone else? Have we had a look at the geological time scale? In your geography NCERT, it's there. So the life of Earth is divided into certain parts. What are those 4 parts? Eons, yeah? Eras, epoch, period. Fine? So I hope you can identify this. This is the most recent of the eras if we talk about. And why is it so much in news? What do we know about this? Climate change, how? Give examples. Biotechnical advances. Hybrid varieties of seeds. Okay. Before moving forward, any other definition of Anthropocene anybody wants to give? It is the era of human beings, that is fine, but it has more to it. It's not just era of human beings. It is that era of human beings where humans are bringing irrepressible damage on the environment around us. That is why this particular phrase has been coined. Otherwise, there was no reason for this phrase. Okay? What do I mean by permanent changes to the environment? You will talk about certain extinct species here. We'll also talk about a rise in the global average temperatures, changes in the sea level. And why these changes are seminal? Because they have occurred at a much faster rate than they were occurring at an earlier point in time. And these changes are permanent, irreversible. You cannot bring back the dodo. Dodo is extinct. You cannot bring it back. Similarly, the great American bison, it went extinct because of hunting, excessive hunting. And hunting and poaching is a menace in India also. We talk about the one-horned rhinoceros, and there are certain endemic species which are falling under the convention called CITES, but still they are prone to being smuggled across the border. So all of these leads to certain permanent changes to the biodiversity, both in terms of forests, animals, water resources, and climate together. Therefore, human beings are considered to be very dangerous creatures for the planet Earth. And therefore, the creation of this era to highlight that we might be heading towards another extinction. Before human beings came to the center space, Earth has already been through 5 mass extinctions. Okay? The 5th is impending after the Anthropocene. It's considered to be the impending mass extinction. So that is why Anthropocene is another keyword which we need to know. From Anthropocene, I can create another keyword called anthropocentrism. Now tell me, what is this? Yes? Man is at the center of everything. For example, if I'm making a policy, development versus environment. We'll be more focused on development. What happened in Joshimath? Case study ho jayega. People keep on asking where to write case studies from. The case studies are already with you. You read the newspapers every day, you have to fit them in the corresponding chapters. Similarly, look at how choked the Manali highway gets during the summers. What have we done to Nainital? Okay, you take kurkure from here and dump over there. You don't bring it back here. This is because humanity or human beings have kept themselves at the center while framing any kind of a policy. And we have been doing this ever since the Industrial Revolution began. And now India says we want to become a developed nation. Brazil says so. So to make these developing countries into developed countries, we need 2.5 Earth in terms of resources, which is not feasible. And therefore, we have the climate change agreements, which are not being followed by the Western nations in letter and spirit. So keeping this in mind, you have this particular keyword, which is very important for anthropological perspectives also. Because right now, we are living in the era of Anthropocene. And what does Anthropocene mean? Where human beings have brought about permanent changes in the environment, which are irreversible. Fine? Let us see if you can identify some keywords here. Anthropocene is clear. Anthropology is clear. Can you tell me anthropometry? Example? Yes? Simpler examples? Simpler. Okay. Head length and head breadth. Any other example which you can think of? Can you give me examples which are more relatable in terms of our daily lives? Mapping the height. Okay. Shape of nose. Application क्या है इसकी? For furnitures. Shoes. Skull imprinting. Okay. Is that a part of craniometry? Okay, good. Yes. What is the term which we use for that? Okay, let me make things simpler for you. These people have read certain things and they are using them here. Okay, so we shouldn't get scared. First thing, anthropometry, measurement of humans. Therefore, the measurement can range from anything. One of the basic examples which I can give you is of a BMI. When we calculate BMI according to height, weight, what should be my ideal parameters? One of the basic examples. Apart from that, suppose Virat Kohli is playing his game and he needs to wear a helmet. If I say that the helmet can be calibrated exactly according to his head size, customization basically, simpler terms mein, that is also anthropometry. Third example, if I want to support my lower back, since I have a desk job where I have to sit for longer hours, I have an arched chair, which gives a support to the lumbar region of my spinal cord. That is also anthropometry. And one of the most recent current affair news which we have to know about this is India size survey. When you order things from Myntra or Amazon, we are tore between US, UK, EUR. Now you will have an India size. The government of India has launched an initiative with NIFT and they are creating a benchmark standard Indian size so that we shouldn't rely on people of other areas, because obviously the body type is different, the height is different. It gets very difficult to find your ideal fit sometimes. That is also anthropometry. Clear? If I have to go to Mars and I want a specific astronomical suit, anthropometry. What you told was fine. Measuring the nose, ear, head length, head breadth, everything is fine. But my area of interest is how will I use that information? So whenever you study anything with respect to these topics, make sure you understand the contemporary relevance of each of them. Contemporary relevance is the highlight of answer writing nowadays. All the toppers are writing this, irrespective of the fact whether the question is asking for it or not. If you do not make a separate head called contemporary relevance, you can write in way forward. These are case studies. Got your case studies? India size survey, current case study. Anthropometry is clear. Now I hope this becomes simpler for people who know what is cranium. What is cranium? हम इंटरव्यू में जाके ये नहीं बोल सकते सर खोपड़ी. No. There is a case in which your skull is encapsulated. There's a membrane, fluid membrane. Okay? So your skull is very beautifully sitting in a certain place, no? Irrespective of how you dance, it's not moving anywhere. So it is fit in a cranium. Cranium. If I study the dimensions of the cranium for different people, it's called craniometry. A sub-part of anthropometry only, but I've just included it so that you familiarize with the term crania. Clear? This everybody is done? Good understanding of this? This is clear? Yes? Now come to this. When we were discussing the definition, you told me anthro is a holistic science. Can you substantiate how and why is it a holistic science? Example. Apna example. Both primitive and modern societies. Fine. When you write your mains answer and your evaluator tells you that you have to write a holistic answer, the first thing which comes to my mind is I have to give every angle possible for this answer. That is what holistic answer means. Social, political, economic, cultural. So my answer becomes holistic. Similarly, there are two approaches when we talk about humanities-based disciplines, holism and atomism. Holism means when you are covering all the facets of a particular concept. For example, we were talking about religion. You will start from animism to modern forms of religion, till Buddhism. Buddhism in terms of how relevant it is even today. So, holism means that you incorporate every aspect. Like the example he was giving was fine, that how sociology is different from anthropology, how psychology is different, how medical sciences is different. In medical sciences, we focus more on the body organs and their functioning and their working. But in anthropology, we use those biological principles like genes, DNA, heredity, Mendel's laws, and we talk about their applications. For example, forensic DNA. Right? So that is why it's called as a holistic approach. And this is a PYQ. Anthropology is a holistic discipline. Discuss. Holism in anthropology. It has been asked in different forms multiple times. The exact opposite of this approach is atomism. So atom, we all know. Atomistic approach means you are having a singular specific approach. Simple? Okay. This I'll come about later on. Forensic anthropology, everyone is familiar. Can you tell me what is your understanding of forensic anthropology? Yes. Can you remember any example, recent example? Okay. More recent? Shraddha Walker case? Okay. So you can interrelate what is DNA, forensic DNA analysis. Everybody must have seen CID or Savdan India, so no need for more elaboration. Okay, economic anthropology. What is your understanding of economic anthropology? What is economics? Your subject, economics. What is that? Numerical? You're defining GDP? Analyzed in terms of stats? Or you're more focused on quantitative growth? Okay. Okay, yes? Money circulation and resources. Okay. Anyone else? In economics, do you also study primitive economics? How does primitive economics work? Yes? No? Just a definition, or you have different examples of barter system, or you go into detail for every community or something like that? No. You are just given an introduction of what barter system was and how we moved from barter system to the present paper money based currency system. That's it. In economic anthropology, as I told you about todas, that they are centered around butter and buttermilk. So therefore, cattle forms the center space of their economic organization. In economic anthropology, we talk about how anthropology has evolved, how economic aspect has evolved with people's lives. If you talk to your parents and ask them about your 5 generations, how you used to, sustain your lives, what was the motto, for example, was it agriculture, was it any other form, and how you have transitioned now to this space. So your evolution from that state of life to this state of life in terms of economy will be covered in economic anthropology, where we'll study about ancient economic practices also, not just the present one. The present ones are not at all studied. We call it as modern economy. We are more focused on how economy evolved, right? Along with human evolution, how did economy evolve for humans? So we'll start from different forms of economic organizations that might have existed. To give one clue, I'll tell you that barter system is also of many types. Open barter, silent barter. There are multiple types of barter system. So concepts like that will be covered in economic anthropology. What is serology, anybody? Everybody uses serum. What is serum? Yes? Medicine. It's a component of your blood. So when you try to differentiate the components of blood, predominantly it is red because of hemoglobin. But if you take in a laboratory and if you try to disintegrate the components, you will see that your blood has a colorless upper layer, which is called serum, and the colorful layers which come beneath. However, serology means studying your blood, simply. Nothing related to serum. I was just trying to indicate that you could derive inferences from serum, right? In detail, it could highlight the measurement of presence of antibodies in your blood. That is serology, right? Many of you might know a pathology test, what a pathology test means. Yes? When you call Dr. Lal Path and say, sir, sample dena hai. Path lab hai na wo? Lal Path lab, pathology lab. Okay? They study about antigen, antibody, your blood parameters. उसी में कहीं पे रिपोर्ट पढ़ोगे तो serology भी आपको मिलेगा. Right? Right. So now we are coming to the classic keywords related to human evolution biologically. As I told you, people generally have this illusion that evolution can only happen biologically. But we have had a lot of discussion that how society, culture, economics, everything around us is evolving. So when I talk about human evolution physically, the terms which we have to know about are certain very well-known famous terms, which probably now NCRTs are going to skip. NCRTs are skipping Darwin, yes, but we are not. Survival of the fittest. theory of natural selection. These are some basic keywords which you will come across and again. And you will use these terms not just in the biological part, but also in studying how anthropology began. Survival of the fittest means that those genes will survive in the long run which outcompete their competitors. Survival of the fittest. Can somebody give me an example of this? Examples? Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. Okay. Any other example? Okay. Any other example apart from the lineage? Dinosaurs. They died in extinction. They not because of competition. Okay, see, when I ask you examples, I am asking you to apply this knowledge around you so that you can use those in your answers also. Not ancient examples. Ancient example ho gaye the. Neanderthal, 2 people answered on that. So I told you move away from that. That means we have to try to find interconnection around us. For example, sickle cell anemia. Have you heard of this disorder? No? Complex example? I'll take a simpler one. Eskimos, everybody knows Inuits? Eskimos. Have you noticed that the body stature, body composition is different for the people who live above the Arctic Circle than us? Why so? Yes, how? They are short in height, therefore heat loss will be less. Second, they are compact. Because they are living in Arctic Circle, they need body fat to preserve themselves from the extensive amount of cold. So can I say that their body has adapted according to their geography? But initially when we all started, we must have started from an older parent, so to speak, evolutionarily, and we all were similar in terms of proportions. But now we are all different because of the geographical conditions, the climatic exposures which we have all got. So therefore, those genes have been selected in those people and different other type of genes have been selected in us. If you look at certain African populations, they are very tall. Okay, they are very tall, they're generally 6 feet plus, and their feet are also very broad. And they make excellent runners because that is a natural adaptation. What is their environment? Grasslands. So when we'll try to understand that our body is trying to make us more adept in living with our surroundings. So therefore, theory of natural selection, select those genes that are best for you, your survival. So for Eskimos, they have a certain group of genes called cold genes, which help them survive the heat, survive the cold. But we do not have them. If you go to the Arctic Circle, you will wear so many layers and thermal jackets and whatnot. But they are living there every day. Is the example clear? Similarly, sickle cell anemia is a disorder. Go home today and read about sickle cell anemia and specifically read about sickle cell anemia in India. That is your homework for today. We'll discuss this tomorrow if you do the homework. If you don't do the homework, I won't discuss. Okay? Read about sickle cell anemia. I'll just give you an overview though. Sickle cell anemia is considered to be a blood disorder normally. But in Africa, this is considered to be a natural trait because nature has selected sickle trait to be the normal trait. Now, when you will read about this, you will get to know why. Right? So these are the examples around us which tell us that how survival of the fittest or theory of natural selection works around us in different ways. Right? What is primatology, everyone? Who are primates? Yeah? Classification of Who are primates? Early humans. Don't say this again, na? Monkeys are also primates. And monkeys are not early humans. So after sickle cell anemia on the right hand side, point number 2, primates. Wherever there is a knowledge gap at an initial level, we have to fill it. It is not a knowledge gap, it is a learning gap. It will come slowly to you. It's very natural that once you read biological anthropology, you will tell me the definition of primates in 2 minutes. Okay? If you look at this classification here, this classification is called taxonomy. Can we recall something from school? Carolus Linnaeus is the father of taxonomy. Can we recall this? This is 10th standard biology, not 12th standard, though. Don't get scared. So when we biologically try to classify living organisms, there is a system to classify them. Because there are hundreds of organisms and I cannot, give a different classification for every organism. It will become redundant. So we made certain groups. For example, mammals who give birth to their young ones and take care of them. That is why they are under the group called mammals. Otherwise, we also have crow, okay, who lays eggs in a different nest, leaves the babies and runs away. Obviously, crow is not a mammal. So we have classified every species and given it a place in the hierarchy. That hierarchy or classification in terms of simple biology is called taxonomy. Taxonomy, hierarchical classification or arrangement of all the living species. Okay? So I have drawn the taxonomy for us, for human beings. We come under the kingdom Animalia. Yes, there are two kingdoms, no? Plants and Animalia. We belong to the phylum Chordata. Chordata meaning species who have spinal cord. We belong to the class Mammalia. Mammals give birth and take care of their young ones. Your parents are taking care of us till today, right? Order, primates. So we are also primates. Family, Hominidae. Genus, Homo. And species, Sapiens. Therefore, we are called Homo sapiens. Okay, we do not have to learn this for every organism. No, I am just giving you an example that what taxonomy means. But yes, however, we should know who are primates because that's categorically mentioned in the syllabus. Right? So this is taxonomy. A logical arrangement and classification of a certain living species. Right? Name of the scholar you can remember, right? Carolus Linnaeus. Okay. Next term is morphological change. What does morphological change mean? What is morphology? Transformation. Morphology means form. Form. At the outset, how do you look? That is morphology. And morphological change means form changes. For example, when you will study human evolution, you will start from Australopithecines, then you will go to Homo erectus, Homo neanderthal, Homo sapien. Everywhere you will not count their bones. You will only look at their morphological broad changes which have happened. For example, how human beings are bipedal creatures, no? Walking on two legs, whereas the earlier species were quadrupedal. How we have a different brain capacity, but the earlier ones had a lesser brain capacity, except Neanderthal. Neanderthal's brain was larger than us. So what is this? Morphological change. In the earlier species, the spinal cord was not straight. It was humped. But now it is straight. So that is also visible morphologically by looking at the species. Similarly, pelvis. The area below your stomach is called pelvis. So the size of the pelvis is different in different organisms. The shape of the pelvis is different. For example, humans have a narrow birth canal, whereas In orangutans, in chimpanzees, the birthing process is very simple, very easy and less painful. Whereas in humans, it's very complicated because of the way our pelvis has changed during the course of human evolution. What are these changes? Morphological changes, which are visible to us. Is it clear? So we have to talk about these keywords. So you can remember like this: morphology means form, F-O-R-M, form, right? The second type of changes are genetic changes, which might not be visible to us directly. Genetic change, which is happening inside you. So all of us belong to the category called Homo sapiens, but we all are different. But this is also true that 99% we are all same. That is also true. But the minor variation which is being accounted for is because of different kind of recombination which is existing within us. And there are multiple factors which bring out those kind of recombinations. So that is what you study under genetic changes, right? So these are the species which fall under the order primates. Humans, apes, monkeys, prosimians. Okay? Now this is about genetics. What do you know about genetics? Do you know what is a gene? Do we know what is a gene? No? Okay. Biological? Your point is around the definition, but I will accept it. Okay. Any other definitions, please? Defines a trait. Okay. Huh? Depicted characters. Effective. Okay. Smallest structure in DNA. Okay. Anyone else? What is a gene? Protein. Thank you. Okay. Do you know any example with which you can relate? For example, which gene is malfunctioned, which production of a particular gene is malfunctioned when a person has diabetes? To make things simple, for those of you who have studied computer programming during BTech, do we have engineers here or the world has changed? Okay. So when you write a code and you run the program, there's a certain output on the screen. Similarly, your body has been codified in the form of information on genes. While we are getting formed from being an embryo towards a Homo sapien, we carry that particular information from our parents in the form of genes. Now the gene is code for you. And when that code will run inside your body, that is called gene expression. And different proteins are formed. So gene is not a protein. Gene is responsible for protein formation. In people who have diabetes since birth, type 1 diabetes, you will see that their body does not know how to produce insulin. What does this mean? They do not know how to produce insulin. Either their gene coding for insulin is absent or it is faulty. So they have to take insulin shots after every meal. Type 2 diabetes, which is a age-related diabetes, which happens because of a lot of overload of fast food, okay, non-exercise diet, eating a lot of burgers, etc., whatever that is. That happens because insulin is getting produced, but in minor amounts because the kind of overload which you are doing in terms of complex sugars is increasing. So your insulin is getting produced, but it is not as effective as it should be. So that is treatable, but type 1 is not treatable. The only option for type 1 is go for gene therapy. And gene therapy is not yet that legal, because to cure this type of diabetes, we will want to do germline gene therapy. Germline gene therapy means when I am in a IVF lab, I would screen for zygotes. Screening for zygote means we can check at the zygotes whether all the functioning with the zygotes is apt or not. And we can reject them if the functioning is not apt. So while that screening happens, if I'm able to make out that this particular zygote has an absence of insulin gene, at that point in the embryonic stage, I can insert the correct copy of insulin, because embryo is a small group of cells. But today we are a million group of cells. It is not humanly possible to insert every cell in your body with the correct copy of insulin. That is why diabetes 1 is also called as non-treatable diabetes. So is the function of genes clear, or the story came too far? It's clear? So that is how genes function. They are responsible for the working of our body. For example, you will see certain people have hormonal issues. So probably because the proteins which have to be formed in their body at a certain level are not getting formed to that level. Right? So always it is not necessary that the gene sequence is missing. There might be cases where it is malfunctioning. Right? So gene, so to speak, is the code which God has written for us in our bodies. And if it goes haywired, we are gone. So gene is that important thing. So it produces different kinds of protein. Keratin is also a form of protein. For example, the kind of hair we have. Each one of us has different hair issues, no? Mota hair, patla hair, chipku hair, silky hair. That is because of the kind of protein we carry, which is responsible for, growth of certain type of hair. And when you're young, your parents might have thought that we have to have that mundan multiple times. Achhe baal aa jayenge. Nahi hota. Because there's a certain gene with which we are born with. So irrespective of 10 mundans, you come out with the same texture of hair. Right? So that happened with me. That is why I am a live example of that. Gene is clear? Okay. Now, talking about heredity and variations. Variation was what we were discussing earlier, that 99% we are all same, but that 1% which makes us different is because of variations. Are the terms getting clear? For people who are scared of biological anthropology, these are the terms which I will use. So, I hope it is not that scary, right? Initially, people were very scared of the biology part. Somatic and germ cells. Can you help me here? Yeah? Doesn't necessarily, yes, that is one aspect of it. Yes. Skin cell and germline gene therapy, I used the term like 2 seconds ago when I was giving you the example of type 1 diabetes, where I'm treating the embryo right from the germ stage, germinal stage, bottommost stage, when you are germinating. So germline therapy, where you are carrying out gene therapy on a zygote, on an embryo. Because I told you it is easy. Embryo is more often than not a group of 8 cells. And it is easy to bring out gene therapy in 8 cells. So germline therapy. Somatic therapy is any cell other than germ cell. This is the ideal definition of somatic cell. More often than not, biotechnological techniques use the term somatic cell for skin cell. So it's considered synonymous to skin cell, but if you ask me the ideal definition, any cell type which is other than germline cell is somatic cell. Okay, these terms are clear? Okay. DNA, RNA and blood groups. Have you done science and tech yet? You are. है? Okay, types of blood groups have you studied? No? अब no बोल दिया, पहले yes बोल दिया. ठीक है. Do we know our blood type? Do you know what the blood type means? A positive का मतलब क्या होता है? Okay. Okay, since this is a technical topic, I'll explain when we come to the topic, right? Proteins are also fine. Cell division. This is one of those chapters where we had 0 questions in anthropology from. But I would say do not skip this topic because UPSC is in the game of surprising nowadays. सो इस साल जो भी सोच के गया सेल डिविजन से कभी क्वेश्चन नहीं आया, वो अभी पूछ लेंगे माइटोसिस एंड मियोसिस में डिफरेंस. So we should make sure we don't skip any topic. Even if any topic is difficult, we'll prepare a one-page note. कितना भी difficult हो, याद कर लो कड़वी दवाई सोच के. But if it comes in the exam, I have to write something. I shouldn't leave it blank. Okay, you will see a lot of market hoopla around this topic. Literally, the count of questions is 0, but we will not skip it. We'll study it. What is cell division? Not biologically. I'm asking you generally, what is cell division? Cell टूट गया in same parts. Yes. Right now we were talking, no, how embryo is a bunch of 8 cells, and now we are a bunch of billion cells. How that has happened? There has got to be a process. And do you know our RBCs, WBCs, they die also. Like your body is an entirely a new kind of a AI machine which has been working since your birth. What is the lifetime of your RBCs though? 120. अभी सिकल सेल अनीमिया पढ़ के आओगे तो मैं कल पूछूंगी what is the lifespan of a sickle cell. Then I will not tell the answer. Okay, I have told you the life of a normal RBC is 120 days. So your body has all these cell division which goes on inside because there is continuous replenishment of cells which is going on. The older ones have to die and the newer ones have to come. Okay, so that is cell division. It happens by 2 ways, mitosis, meiosis. Mitosis relates to normal general cell division, whereas meiosis is specific to your gametes. Gametic cell division it is called. When I talk of gametes, I mean in humans, spermatophores and ovaries. Right? That is related. Whenever you come across the term gamete or germline, उसका मतलब ही ये होता है. Either ovarian cells or spermatophore cells. Right? Now come to your favorite part. Now everybody is comfortable. Culture, ethnicity. Okay. Let us begin with this one. Has anybody faced culture shock in Delhi? Culture shock in Delhi? No. Everybody is comfortable. Okay. Great. What is ethnocentrism? What is ethnocentrism? Thank you. Have you forgotten? It's like not even 1 hour. The class began with ethnocentrism. Don't do this. Okay, everybody, come back to the class. Lunch time is over. Ethnocentrism is the ideology which believes that your own ideology is the most superior one. Okay. What is cultural relativism? Thank you. Now define it. Okay. The ideology that, can you phrase it like an answer, please? When you have been introduced to the keywords, you have to give a well-framed definition, which is your own definition, so that you don't come running and ask which scholar to write, which scholar to quote the definition from. The scholarly definitions are fine, but I need to have my own understanding of the topic, so that I can write my own definition. What if you forget the scholar? क्या लिखोगे वहाँ पे? So try to give a well-framed kind of a definition. Come again for cultural relativism. Unique. Yes. Good. Right? Cultural relativism we all know. Okay. Now there are 3 terms which we should know. 3 terms which should be studied interrelatedly. Enculturation, acculturation, transculturation. Enculturation, anybody? Do we know what is enculturation? Yes? No. Anyone else? Since you have been a child, while growing up, you have inculcated or internalized certain practices by looking at your parents. or adults, no? For example, if there is a mandir, you have to do this. ये सिखाया नहीं है किसी ने, but we have seen our parents do this, so we do it. Enculturation is the imbibing of cultural traits which starts happening in a very nascent stage in human beings. However, it is both unconscious and conscious. How unconscious or subconscious? Where we are not questioning things, where the rational facility of mind has not yet opened. So you accept blindly what the adults are doing. That is the first stage, subconscious. Okay, if you have an elder sister, she is slapping your cousin, you will also slap your cousin. इसने किया. So वो क्या है? Monkey tendency. Monkeys learn by imitation. So that is a remnant of evolution. We are very good at imitation. Second thing, at a later point in life, you have conscious enculturation, where you will not follow leftist or rightist ideology because your father tells you to, but because you understand their ideological spheres, you have read Marx, and you know what did Marxian ideology stands for and what do you support or not. So that is rational enculturation, which happens at a later point in your life. Enculturation is fine. Imbibing the cultural components which are existing in your environment. Simple. One of the most common examples of enculturation is the most common food that you eat. So since until you reached college, I think we must have had a homogenized palette of food when it comes to home. Once we went outside college to different states, maybe to study, or now you're here, you get exposed to different kind of cuisines and you end up trying them. So the enculturation which happened for you was you were conditioned to, like a certain type of a food. That is also a part of enculturation. The second term is acculturation. Any term with the prefix a means what? Something negative or some absence is going on. I'll give you one more hint. The most common way in which acculturation as a term is used for India is in perspective of the tribal populations. Why? Because majority of the tribal populations are subsuming themselves into the majority Hindu fold and leaving back their cultural tenets. So they are the ones who are getting acculturated. I hope you can understand what acculturation means. Where a typical minority culture is losing its cultural tenets and merging into a mainland majority culture. But there's one more facet to it. Acculturation can sometimes be inculcated by application of force also. For example, colonialism and imperialism tendencies. You will find certain pockets in and around Mexico where people speak Spanish, where they should ideally speak Mexican. But because they were a colony, the erstwhile colony of Spain, so therefore they speak Spanish. We speak English, right? We respect English. We think English speaking will put us in a better place today. That is also a effect of colonialism. Okay, these are the examples of acculturation. The most relevant example of acculturation today is in terms of tribals, because there are two reasons to this. Post-independence government of India has had a middle route with respect to tribal policies. We are not forcing them to come and intermingle with the majority religion, because there are tribes like Sentinelese, Ongi, who are living a secluded life. On the other hand, we have tribes like Oraon, Santals, Mundas, who are living like Hindus, dressing like Hindus, celebrating Hindu festivals also. So there has always been a median approach for the tribal populations from the Indian perspective. But when we talk about acculturationist debate, what is happening is, as I was telling you, Todas do not find their subsistence as a way of life in terms of cattle now very sustainable. So they are forced to change their livelihood. So when they are forced to change their livelihood and move to Bangalore, Chennai to work in different forms as house helps, as drivers, as conductors, they have to behave themselves like the majority groups there. They cannot dress in a ethnic toda, dhoti or sari and go and work there. Try to study about todas, you will see they have a very different kind of an attire. A black and red and white checkered dress. वो उनका hallmark है. So they adopted the habits of Hindus so that they can be more desirable, first thing, to work as maids in the houses of other people. So they are changing their practices. They are changing their way of life. This acculturation is not forced, but it is responsible because of a certain degree of pull factors. Here, what are the pull factors? Employment, right? They, however, come back to their settlements and they worship their traditional deity. All of that is there. But every day they are moving to the city to work. And they dress like us. Probably they wear saris. They wear normal, they put a bindi. So therefore, they are trying to mingle within you. That is acculturation, right? In the erstwhile perspective, acculturation was forced because of the colonial paradigms. As I told you, the white man's burden, where the Britishers felt it is their moral responsibility to teach us how to live. That was forced. And that is why we had so many movements. You will see the kind of revolts which we had pre-independent, in the pre-independent India, right? There were a lot of tribal revolts related to both cultural jurisprudence as well as land rights. Clear? The picture is clear? Now, transculturation is slightly different than acculturation, though it also has the facet of intermingling of cultures to a certain degree. But here you will not find the idea that the culture is going to be imposed on you. It has a degree of voluntarity. Okay? Clear, everyone? You will come across this term again and again when we'll talk about the tribal populations, that why and how acculturation is happening. These keywords are clear? Can you now tell me what deculturation will probably mean? Negative progression towards culture or away from culture? Away from culture, when you tend to lose your culture. For example, US says that they are a melting pot of all cultures, that they absorb everybody who comes there. Okay, so can I say in a globalized world, there is a probability that a certain degree of deculturation can happen? Yes or no? We might not celebrate our traditional festivities with so much sincerity that we used to do earlier on. We only celebrate the prominent ones now for an Insta reel. More for an Insta reel than for getting back together with your family. And these are changing perspectives. This is how societies evolve, right? These terms are clear? Okay, now let us come to current affairs part so that you can tell me some examples. Any example with respect to ethnic violence? Yes, please. Manipur, thank you. Name of the communities? Kuki, Zombie, Meiti. Tisri? Nagas? Any other example? Fine. Fine. That has a different reason. It is not ethnic violence. It is actually military warfare, I would say, because they are fighting for the area specifically. They are killing unknown people, but okay, fine. It's targeting a religion. Any ethnic violence related news outside India, which you can remember? Myanmar Rohingyas, the burning conflict of Rohingyas, and why it is even more kind of an important issue for India, because the influx of Rohingyas is going to happen inside India. So it's already happening in Manipur. The refugee crisis is also one of the factors which contributed to the recent outburst, right? Rohingya crisis, Kuki Meiti crisis is there. left-wing extremism. Have you heard of these terms? Or are you sleepy? No? Then give examples. Any other ethnic conflicts which you know of? Okay, how many of you know the Manipur conflict in detail? That what is the story? What is happening? Did you read? Yeah, please tell me what is happening. What status? That's the only issue? You know, do you know the historical underpinnings of this issue? This is not a recent issue. Hill, yes, yes. So, see, since you have started reading anthropology, I would suggest you to have a detailed perspective on the 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐬𝐫𝐢𝐻𝐿 issue. It's a very good coincidence that when we are studying this subject, something like that is in news, and it is a direct part of our syllabus. In paper 2, we have a chapter called ethnic conflicts, where we'll study different kind of ethnic conflicts India has ever seen. So that forms your case study there, very important case study. So make sure that you go back to your newspapers and you study the 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐬𝐫𝐢𝐻𝐿 crisis. It is very important. Not just anthro, it's important for your GS also. Okay? Okay. So ethnic violence or cleansing, we have two terms here. Violence might relate to a kind of violence which we are seeing right now in Manipur, which is targeting one or more communities, which results in killing of people. Cleansing is targeted killing of people belonging to one community and exterminating them outside the state. And Rohingyas are a victim of ethnic cleansing, and they are broadly Muslims, right? So Rohingyas are an example of ethnic cleansing. Okay, try to, now I hope you will understand that in what lines you have to think. Try to garner more examples, more perspectives into these things. Since now you know what the topic is going to be about, you can form a line of thought. What are ethnic conflicts? What conflicts India has seen? You can just try to get an overview, right? Okay. Now coming to two more terms, emic and etic perspective. So this is technical anthropological terminology. Emic perspectives in anthropology are those perspectives which give you an insider's point of view. For example, in the discussion, we were talking about the difference between armchair anthropologists and fieldwork anthropologists. When I go to the fieldwork, if I carry my ethnocentric bias with me, despite going for a fieldwork, the work which I'll write will be influenced by my bias. But if through my fieldwork, for example, this classroom is my fieldwork and I am interviewing you people for my research. If I interview you and I ask you about your culture, religion, society, and I write those perspectives in my work, that is emic perspective. Got it? Emic perspective means an insider's point of view with respect to any culture. Clear? The opposite of that is etic. Obviously, outsiders. So I am sitting here, if I am an armchair anthropologist, I'll have a perspective about this community and I'm writing it in my book. That is etic. Term is clear? Emic, etic. एक ट्रिक बताऊं? आप लोगों को नींद आ रही है? एक ट्रिक बताऊं? एमिक में एम है ना? M means me. Me means insider who is living in my culture. So my culture, my view, emic. Okay? जो सो गया उसकी ट्रिक मिस हो गई. हाँ? हाँ. I'll do it for you. It's okay. Both of them works for you? Okay. पहले बोल देते. It's all right. Okay, this is done. Now, the difference between ethnography and ethnology. Do we know this? I assume we don't, because this is also anthropological terminology. So see, logy means study. And logy always has a broader perspective. Psychology, sociology, anthropology. So ethnology. Ethno is stemming from the term ethnic. So when I study different ethnic cultures and I'm detailing on their tenets, that is ethnology. So therefore, if I say that I study a detailed perspective of a culture and I'm also drawing comparisons between them, it's fine. It is a part of ethnology. Ethnography, on the other hand, let me give you a parallel example. Geography mein you must have come across this term. What is cartography? Specifically studying only about maps. So ethnography, specifically studying only about one culture, one ethnicity. Fine? You'll remember this? So the scientific description of people's cultures along with their custom, habit, practices, etc. Whereas here, the study of characteristics of different peoples and the differences and relationship between their cultures. You will not forget this. Every term is there in the handout. In fact, the first handout, actually the set of handouts which you have got is for 4 classes. They have clubbed and given you this. The first class handout is for keyword part. Okay, page number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just these 6 pages are for today's class. Okay, so whatever terms we have been discussing, they are there. Apart from that, you will have multiple more terms. Okay, do not get overwhelmed. You are only getting to know the discipline. Okay, as time passes by, you will know all these terms. Okay, so and the rest of them are for subsequent classes. Do not read them before doing the classes. Okay, you might feel a lot of information bombardment. All right, this is clear. Now coming to different types of marriages. Do you know what is incest? What is incest? Yes, marrying in same family. What does a taboo mean? Yes, prohibition. If I say that the practice of incest is almost universally a taboo, will you agree with me? Almost. Go by keywords. See, I would like to first rectify the definition a bit. Incest is marrying one's kin. Family as a unit might still be brought because there are communities in India who allow marriages of cross cousins, parallel cousins, uncles, and etc. I'm talking about marrying your kin, who is your direct blood relative. That is considered to be an incest. And yes, incest is a taboo in universal societies. The perspective which is different is that we might not have a legislation altogether which bans this practice in every country. For example, it is a very serious issue. France recently has passed a legislation, a categorical legislation passed by the parliament which says that incest as a practice is banned and it will be punishable. This legislation was passed last year. India does not have any legislation because it is considered to be a kind of a self-understood fact. You know, it's not even thinkable to have a legislation on this because it seems very normal that who would kind of have these kind of relationships with their brother, mother, father, sister. That's the whole logic of incest. But France did this, and the background data which they relied upon, it was very astounding. There were a lot of teen uh, girl rape complaints which were centered around the fathers and brothers. So therefore, despite we considering it that yes, it is a taboo, we would not understand that how it is, the situation is grave, going by the indicators. So they decided to legalize it so that people can be brought to court. So France is one of those countries who have brought a legislation banning incest. Culturally, if you ask me, India also does not allow incest, right? Incest taboo is one of the favorite questions of your examiners in this examination. Okay, they keep on asking in different forms. Now, other type of keywords. Monogamy. What is monogamy? Mono, gamy, polygamy. So if there is a lady who has multiple husbands, what form of marriage will I classify her under? Huh? Polygyny, polyandry. Thank you. So polyandry also we know. Good. Endogamy, within a unit, a group. Example, caste endogamy in India. What is exogamy? Outside the group. Parallel cousin marriages and cross cousin marriages. Who are parallel cousins and who are cross cousins? You can give an example if you don't know how to give a definition. Rather than lineage, it is centered around the gender of your parent. So, mothers, they are parallel. I will simplify things for you guys. Your father is a male. Anybody in the extended family who is related to your father in terms of being a brother, who is also a male, and their children will be your parallel cousins. For example, Chacha, Tauji, Papa. Brothers, males, their children and you are parallel cousins. However, you and your Buaji's son or daughter, your cousin. Buaji is the opposite gender of your father. So opposite gender to cross cousin. Same on mother's side. Masi ki beti, parallel cousin. Mama, cross cousin. Simple? Understood? Okay. Tell me examples. Which societies allow parallel cousin and cross cousin marriages? Southern India. Which type? Parallel or cross? Cross cousin. Yes. And are there any ramifications of cross cousin marriages, speaking biologically? This is a question. This is a PYQ I'm asking you. Ramifications of cross cousin marriages. Genetic. How? Because see, it is a kind of extended inbreeding. Generally, you will study this in biology. We have 2 copies of every gene. Okay. Because God is so gracious, they have given us 2 copies. In case one is not functioning properly, the other one can cover it up for it. And one is called recessive copy, one is called dominant copy. Suppose I have a certain disorder, but my husband doesn't have it. So the chances of my child having that disorder decreases rapidly. But if I'm marrying within the same family, and even if me and my husband both have the recessive copy of that gene, that will end up becoming the dominant one in the child. So out of nowhere, the child will have the disease, even if both of us were not having it. Because they were recessive in both of us, it takes the form of a dominant disease in the child. This is one example. So inbreeding is known to cause certain biological ramifications, but there are certain more acceptable reasons that why these marriages are followed in these societies. Now give me valid logical reasons why these marriages are followed in the Muslim communities or in the southern communities, so to speak. Logic say. Same caste. Okay. Same family background. Familiarity, first point. When I talk about caste endogamy, the idea is around arranged marriages, predominantly in India, and still today we have 97% arranged marriages, according to the data. So when you are going all out for a total kind of a new setup, where the person is within your caste, but from a different village, from a different family, and you do not know anything about their whereabout, it becomes a tricky affair. Therefore, to build over familiarity, these communities believe that you have seen the child since their childhood. You have had certain interactions. You belong to the same familial setup. There is a psychological security. There is a sense of acceptance. They know you, you know them. So the family thinks that even if the children do not get along together, the family bonds are so strong, so tight, that something can be worked out. So it is considered to be a more stable form of a relationship rather than going all out for a whole unknown arranged marriage setup, which is otherwise followed when there are less or no options available to be married within the family. They also go for caste endogamy outside the family, right? That is one of the reasons. Second, the metrics around with marriage works, dowry, kharcha, bouquet, banquet hall, everything is sorted. Because perpetually your your papa and your bua are brother sisters, so they will have certain similar core values. वो ऐसे नहीं बोलेंगे मुझे दहेज नहीं लेना है, मुझे देना है. They will have similar fundamental core values. So that thing is sorted. Okay? There are more societal reasons or societal implications as to why these societies were bent on cross-cousin marriages, so to speak. Okay, so always do not judge, try to find for logical reasons. But however, there are instances that there can be, if not in this generation, in subsequent generations, there might be certain recessive genes which can take the form of a dominant character. So therefore, the modern concept, even for arranged marriage, vouches for, if you're going for an arranged marriage, match your biological and genetic profile. That is more logical. Okay? If you're going into the unknown, at least let us scientifically know that you're heading into the right direction if you want a progeny. Otherwise, it is fine. Okay? These terms are clear? Acha, levirate, sororate. You can try to answer. Can you make it simple for your friends? एक तो ये जो homophones होते हैं, diseased husband, the spelling she is using is DECEASCD, और हमें समझ में आ रहा है DISCASCD. Yes. So in older practices, if you know about India, when one of the spouses dies, if the husband dies, that erstwhile wife, she is married to the husband's brother. That is considered levirate. And if the wife dies, the husband is married to her sister. So S for sister, S for sororate. Okay, now we will remember this. Now this you can easily tell me. Classification of societies on the basis of descent. What is descent? Line of inheritance. Okay. So suppose I'm talking about patrilineal. So therefore the line of descent is traced through the male ayah, male. Matrilineal through the female ayah. Example, Khasis. Either example, whole of India, except matrilineal tribes, right? Ambilineal, where both of them are given equal importance in terms of descent also. Now this you will tell me. Difference, yeah? In one of them you can choose. You can choose whether you want to follow matrilineal descent or patrilineal descent. Okay? These societies are very minuscule. Okay? We do not have multiple societies on these lines anymore. Okay? Are the terms clear? Yeah? You can opt to follow either matrilineality or patrilineality in certain societies where you inherit the mother's side of wealth or father's side of wealth. And there are, as I told you, there are only 1 or 2 societies who allow for these kind of descent. Majority of them are patrilineal. Okay? There's another term which was left in the last one, culture lag. This. And culture trait, culture complex. Can anybody tell me what is a culture trait? Culture trait? Try to guess, it's all right. Example. Okay. Any other example? Or is then how would you define culture complex? See, when anthropology as a school of discipline started to grow, as I told you, there were multiple scholars ventured in all the directions to study different societies. Most of them went to Africa, India, Indonesia, New Guinea. The area around Melanesia is very famous for anthropological studies. A lot of studies are there from that area. So every anthropologist came with their own records. And all of them wanted to give their own hypothesis or theory, stating that how we have come to this mode of civilization. The question which everybody wanted to answer was, how evolution of societies happened? So everybody started giving their own theories. If you look at your syllabus, you have a list of 7 theories there. So there were evolutionist scholars, there were diffusionists, there were functionalists, and so on. Everybody wanted to say that our perspective is fine, and we have our own case study to justify why our perspective is fine. In one of those perspectives, diffusion to be precise, they proposed the idea of a culture trait. The smallest unit of a certain culture is called as culture trait. And when that culture travels across different worlds, that culture trait diffuses into the rest of the population. This is the idea of diffusionists. For example, I'll give you one example. It might not feel valid, but also respect the time period the scholars were studying. They were studying in the 1800s. So obviously most of their studies might not feel logical to us, but we have to, understand their perspective. Disciplines and scholars are a product of their times, right? So they gave the example of Egypt. Egypt has very good agriculture because of Nile Valley. Egypt has the great pyramids, so therefore very superior. Egypt has sun temple worship, very elaborate sun temples. So they said that, okay, Egypt is the epitome of civilization. Egypt was the first place where civilization came into existence. And from that place, different cultural traits migrated to rest of the parts of the world. For example, a sun temple in Cambodia, sun temple worship in India. So they said that Egypt is the center. Wahan se sab kuch aaya. So for them, every cultural trait is centered around Egypt. Though later on you will realize that yes, it's not so valid, because they were so influenced by Egypt by looking at the monumental structure of the pyramids. They thought that yahi hai jo hai. Like this is the civilization, or kuch ho hi nahi sakta. Everybody else has copied them, because Homo sapien anywhere else cannot innovate. So this is the ideology. This is what a cultural trait means. The trait means the most defining feature of a culture. For example, Ganga Aarti in Hinduism, or doing an Aarti in Hinduism, is a culture trait. And a group of cultural traits together form a culture complex. Right? This is the difference between trait and complex. Do not worry, when we'll come to diffusion, we'll study this in very much detail with the name of the scholars also. For now, the term is clear, right? Okay. Culture lag has been left. Culture lag is when a particular culture is not able to keep up with the pace of modernity or speed around it, and is not ready to accept newer technological dimensions. For example, Sentinelese tribe. So if you know, there is a GT road in Andaman. It's called Andaman Trunk Road, which was ordered to be closed by the Supreme Court in 2002, but still it is functional. And the reason was it is passing through Sentinelese neighborhoods. And Sentinelese are very hostile tribes, and they do not want to see us. They hate mainland creatures. And there have been evidences that because of the functioning of that road, there have been researchers, people, journalists who have been snooping around the Sentinelese, taking their pictures, and second, sexually assaulting them. There have been news around this. So you must have heard about 2 years back, a Chinese photographer, journalist was shot down by Sentinelese with a bow and arrow. So they are hostile tribes. They do not want to be modernized. They do not want to come in contact with us. Second example, Masai Mara tribe. Where are the Masais? Do you know? तो बहुत common example है. Africa. Masai Mara. they they now have created a tourism around them. So if you see, a lot of people now are visiting Africa, they visit to get the Masai Mara culture. They know English. Those tribal people know English. And they are living to the tribal standards only. So they welcome you in the village and they give you, like chokidani hota hai na, aapko village life ka glimpse deta hai. So similarly, Masai Maras are giving you a glimpse of tribal life and charging you a very hefty fees. So on one hand, I have Sentinelese, on the other hand, I have Masai Mara. So different cultures, different paradigms. So for anthropologist scholars who are studying Sentinelese, they might feel that they are in a culture lag because they are not using automobiles, they are not using any kind of modern equipment. But for them, they are preserving their culture. Right? So culture lag is a very relativistic or subjective term, depends on the context in which we are using it. Right? Any doubts? Coming to the sources, everyone. The most common and the most lucid source which I will suggest you all to begin your studies from is EPG Pathshala. Sorry, EPG Pathshala and 𝐂𝐻𝐽𝐻𝐾𝐥, IGNOU material basically. Because it has been designed in a very simplistic and lucid way. The language is simple. You will not feel, very kind of overwhelmed. It's a very simply designed course. And it is available free of cost online. No need to purchase it because there are repetition of chapters and topics. You have to selectively, to build a context of the discipline, you can read through it. So 𝐂𝐻𝐽𝐻𝐾𝐥 is IGNOU material. EPG Pathshala is the government of India's course. So Swayam jo platform hai. So that you will find certain topics there which are useful. So it is your subjective relevance. In some degrees, you will see that both of them are repeating certain content also. Okay, so both of them you can use alternatively or you can stick to one. Okay, secondly, Ember and Ember. Ember and Ember is more relevant for one, its case studies. You have certain boxes in that book and the boxes tell you a story of different researchers. It is entirely a subjective notion that how much case studies you can memorize, but they will surely broaden your perspective. Second, for socio-cultural parts, for chapters like racism and all, that book is good. It gives you a perspective. Again, you can find the PDF copy of this book on Telegram. If you think it is a very hefty book, and I'm telling you it should not be read from cover to cover, only selective reference. So you can again rely on the soft copies also. So we'll be beginning our syllabus with socio-cultural anthropology part and more specifically anthropological theories. Before jumping straightly to anthropological theories, we'll have two more classes where we'll discuss history of anthropology, development of anthropology as a discipline, the chapter 1.1 and 1.2 in your syllabus. We'll talk about the subfields of anthropology, relation of anthropology with other disciplines, differences between them, all that introductory part in the next two classes. Okay, we'll also answer and try to frame the kind of questions which have been asked from those parts. After that, after 1.2, we will move on to socio-cultural and more specifically the part called anthropological theories, because theories form the foundation of any discipline. Because I told you there's a lucid mention of the theories which we have to study in your syllabus. So when we'll study them one by one, you'll get more perspectives, more scholarly perspectives, which will add value to your preparation, right? Sorry. For anthropological theories, the source which I will be referring to is called History of Anthropological Thought. Name of the book. Name of the author is 𝐂𝐻𝐽𝐻𝐾𝐥 and Upadhyay. For people who find this book difficult, see, 𝐂𝐻𝐽𝐻𝐾𝐥 is always there. 𝐂𝐻𝐽𝐻𝐾𝐥 is the universal source for all the topics. Because we are looking for specialized answers, we will also do value addition from other sources. Right? So, वो तो है ही, उसके ऊपर I am telling you sources, okay? So, after 𝐂𝐻𝐽𝐻 and Upadhyay, for people who feel 𝐂𝐻𝐽𝐻 Upadhyay is quite tough, you can refer to Makhan Jha. Makhan Jha is also a very sleek book, called Introduction to Socio-Cultural Anthropology. That is also fine. Right? So right now I am telling you the sources for socio-cultural part because we are beginning with that part. For physical, for biological part, we'll refer to Pnath. Okay? Apart from that, I would recommend for people who have this mental block that you do not have a background in biology, though it doesn't matter, but still I have students who have repetitively came and told me this. You can watch conceptual videos on YouTube. You can come and ask me anytime. Apart from these classes, I'll be available for mentorship sessions on Monday and Friday from 11 to 1 in the morning. Okay? So broadly for physical anthropology, we'll talk about the reference which is Pnath. For archaeological anthropology, we'll talk about a book called Introduction to Prehistory by D.K. Bhattacharya. D.K. Bhattacharya for archaeology. And for Indian anthropology, for part 2 of your paper, paper 2, Nadeem Hasnain has written 2 books for Indian society as well as for tribal India. And from today onwards, whatever newspaper source you're following or whatever is your route to cover the daily current affairs, it doesn't matter whether you follow a magazine or a newspaper, whatever news is relevant from anthropological perspective, bring it to your notes. Bring it to your notes beside the chapter, okay, not separately. When you write separately, you will forget those examples and you will not know where and how to use them. So if you do this exercise from the beginning, you will not run for case studies towards the end. Okay, so that way you will also learn to retain all these case studies in your mind. Okay. Apart from that, in terms of handouts, you will get these kind of printed material after every class. There will be certain classes also where you'll get a kind of a synopsis, which will be handwritten also by me specifically. You might get that for certain topics. Okay. And there will be a daily answer writing question. One question every day initially when we are building the foundations of this discipline, where you will have a 7-minute timer. You write your answer in 7 minutes and we'll have a discussion over it. Right? So we are aiming to have a prototype of model PYQs by the time we complete our course here, which you can fall back to revise upon. Apart from all the traditional sources or primary sources which I have mentioned to you, you can also refer to Vivek Bhasmi's Anthropology Simplified or 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐧𝐧𝐞𝐥's Anthropology Demystified. Any book. If you want to know how answers need to be structured or is there any content you're missing on. Okay, that will give you a brief introduction to the whole discipline. Okay. But make sure that you take out certain time for anthro in terms of reading from the books because it will build an organic link with the subject. Otherwise, it will be plain memorization of facts. Because questions are now changing in terms of the orientation. They are asking you dynamic aspects. They are asking you your personalized opinions rather than static questions. However, there are static questions which remain to hold a great part in the subject. Right? To build good perspectives, we have to make sure that we read ourselves. Right? Any doubt? So the exercise for today, first is you will read about sickle cell anemia. One thing, read about sickle cell anemia. Second, go through your handout for class 1, which relates only to the keywords. Go through these keywords. There will be majority of them which has been covered in the discussion. If you find anything which is, not understandable to you, you can ask me tomorrow. You can get back to me on that. Okay? Sickle cell anemia is your homework. You will read about that and come. No need to write yet. We'll have writing exercise in the coming week when we have certain fodder which is ready. Clear? Apart from this, any Yojana, Kurukshetra, any issue which is tribe specific has to be covered. Okay? Any editorial which is tribe specific, as we were discussing the importance of 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐬𝐫𝐢𝐻𝐵 crisis also. Okay? If you want to ask me anything, you can ask me here now. No doubts? Okay, so thank you so much. We continue tomorrow, same time.